This is Johnny. He loves sci-fi and soccer, but he also has some behavior problems. Problems making friends and not being liked by classmates is really common for kids like Johnny. This is social exclusion, which basically means being disliked or ignored by a majority of your peers or classmates. Johnny doesn't get the same opportunities as his classmates to develop some really important social skills. He's going to have an even harder time socializing in the future. It's frustrating, and he doesn't know how to communicate his emotions, so his behavioral issues get worse. He also doesn't learn those social skills necessary to succeed in the future. Johnny can be equipped to build strong social, romantic, and professional relationships, but we need to take the time to understand and fix the problems he faces as a child. In order to improve and develop tools and interventions, we first need to understand the underlying problems. We need to understand social exclusion for kids like Johnny. There have been studies examining behavioral difficulties and peer problems, but these studies use a researcher's perspective to choose important variables and focus the study. While these studies are incredibly valuable and important, children see the world differently than adults. What does Johnny think? How do Johnny's peers rationalize the exclusion? Using a mixed methods approach, I asked kids why they thought children with behavioral difficulties are left out. My participants generated 5 groups of reasons as to why peers may exclude children with behavioral difficulties. Statements in Group 1 suggested that peers perceive children with behavioral difficulties as disruptive to typical activities or games. The second set of statements suggested that children with behavioral difficulties don't communicate well. They use inappropriate ways to express their emotion, so they're excluded for being mean or bad. Statements in Group 3 talked about stigmatizing beliefs about children with behavioral difficulties. They cheat, they're inattentive, they don't understand rules, or they have personality conflicts with others. They're too difficult to include. Statements in Group 4 discussed fears. Participants were uncomfortable with or afraid of differences. They're also afraid to stand up about bullying and exclusion. The 5th group of statements focused on how children with behavioral difficulties are uncool or didn't belong. My participants were afraid to include children with behavioral difficulties because they're seen as easily angered, unpredictable, socially undesirable. My results showed that it's important to educate children about behavioral difficulties and the reasons why some children struggle to regulate their behavior. It's also important to promote diversity and different ways of thinking and behaving. Teaching children ways to de-escalate situations and effective ways to help others with intense emotions may make them feel more comfortable to work with peers with behavioral difficulties.